Much about tornadoes remain a mystery, but they can pack winds more than 200 miles per hour and leave a path of damage a mile wide and 50 miles long. More than 1,000 tornadoes are reported in the U.S. each year. That's typically more than anywhere else in the world.
They result in nearly 100 deaths and 1,500 injuries annually. The storms also cause millions or sometimes billions of dollars in damage to property and crops. And forecasters warn tornadoes can happen anytime, anywhere. In fact, they've been reported in all 50 states. NOAA says how tornadoes form is not fully understood. So during severe weather, it's important to follow the watches and warnings in your area.
Oftentimes, this means you need to find shelter. Try to put as many barriers between you and the outside as possible. But that can be easier said than done, as not all buildings have storm shelters. In November 2018, 2 people died when an EF1 tornado hit near an Amazon distribution facility in Baltimore, Maryland. During the storm, part of the roof came off and the walls collapsed. A similar scene unfolded 3 years later at a warehouse outside St. Louis.
Reporter Susan El-Khoury investigates how the construction of the building could have played a role and questions Amazon about what they're doing to protect workers.
On December 10th, 2021,
911, where's your emergency?
The Amazon warehouse got hit.
panic 911 calls
People are trapped in the bathroom. We got hit by a tornado.
from people working in an Amazon warehouse
The building just fell out of nowhere. I need help! Help!
when an EF3 tornado swept through Edwardsville, Illinois.
Nobody wakes up and thinks this is going to be the day I die.
Alonzo Harris was one of 40 employees who survived. That day, the delivery driver had just returned to the warehouse when a manager redirected him to take shelter.
The floor started shaking like it was coming off the ground. I was in the corridor, I turned around and I saw debris flying in the air. I screamed out loud, Lord, I don't want to get sucked away.
6 people who took cover in a bathroom never made it home, including Alice McEwen's only child, Austin.
It ripped my heart out, basically. I mean, it was the worst day of my life.
The warehouse did not have a storm shelter, but OSHA investigated and found Amazon met minimal federal safety guidelines.
If another store came through there like that, it wouldn't take nothing to have the same exact reaction. And not just to that building, almost every building out there is built the same way.
The warehouse was built using tilt-up construction, which involves concrete wall panels that rely on the roof to stand up. It can be devastating during high wind events because if the roof is torn off, it could cause the walls to collapse.
Ordinary buildings are not designed for tornadoes.
Mark Levitan is a lead research engineer at the National Institute of Standards and Technology, known as NIST.
The word tornado does not appear in our building codes and standards, with the exception of if we're discussing storm shelters.
He led the study following the 2011 tornado in Joplin, Missouri, an EF5 storm that left a devastating mile-wide path, killing 161 people. NIST researchers found 135 of them died from building failures. The study looked at the Home Depot, a tilt-up building. The metal roof flew away and almost every wall crumbled, killing 8 people. Researchers found similarly constructed buildings were prone to structural collapse but met building codes that required withstanding 120-mile-an-hour winds. Speeds in Joplin were nearly double.
Have there been any conversations about adding storm shelters to those types of buildings that we know could be more vulnerable?
NIST recommends that we install storm shelters across a wide range of building types in the most tornado-prone regions of the country.
Since Joplin, federal building codes changed to require storm shelters in schools and critical infrastructure such as fire and police stations, but they're still not required in warehouses and commercial spaces.
If the goal is to protect life safety, then that's the most important thing would be to install a storm shelter.
A new warehouse stands at the site in Edwardsville, but it doesn't have a storm shelter.
It's a slap in the face, it really is.
As families like the McEwens question why it wasn't added in the rebuild, Amazon said it's ultimately a choice for the building's owner.
I think it's important to remember that we're a tenant at the warehouse and that the landlord is required to restore the building to its pre-tornado condition, and that's what he's doing. That doesn't mean that we're not having conversations with them, but what we're focused on right now are the things we have control over.
Following its investigation, OSHA did send a letter telling Amazon to make safety changes.
We are calling on Amazon to be an industry leader for workplace safety. 6 workers died in this event. It was a tragic event. So that by itself should be a wake-up call for employers.
Amazon said it's conducted an internal investigation and conversations are ongoing about ways to protect its more than 800 facilities in North America.
This event led us to really focus in on emergency preparedness and emergency response and to make some really, I think, important changes that have elevated our program.
The company said it's increased the amount of training for employees and they are required to wear ID cards that include a building floor plan. Amazon also hired a chief meteorologist to better anticipate and act in advance of weather events.
This meteorologist allows us not only to just monitor the weather, but to project weather. We saw that become really helpful in the hurricanes in Florida.
The 2021 tornado also sparked a congressional inquiry. Lawmakers said they're concerned Amazon is making employees work in dangerous conditions.
Regardless of how these structures are built, that is oversight that we have to work on too.
In September 2022, Missouri Congresswoman Cori Bush introduced 2 bills. One that would prevent workers from being fired for seeking shelter during disasters, and another that would require OSHA to create a plan to protect workers in high wind conditions.
Can we also pass a law that says that if your employee says that, they would rather be home, they would rather leave the facility, they should be able to do that.
While neither measure made it out of committee, survivors and families of victims believe it's the right step towards added safety.
The people who didn't survive, they're always in the back of my head.
And that would be justice for us if they could save other lives. I mean, we felt like our son shouldn't have lost his life.
At the end of 2023, 2 years after the tornado, Amazon told us the warehouse was not in use, citing operational needs. The company faced 5 separate lawsuits filed by surviving employees and families who lost loved ones, all claiming negligence. I also reached out to the landlord of the warehouse, and they did not want to comment. In St. Louis, I'm Susan L. Corey.